We do have a brief meeting that we'll recess for just for a few minutes at 9:15, and then we'll come back into session for this workshop. And so we're looking at the agenda, and of course the first couple of items would be call to order, and then secondly would be changes to the agenda. We have no recognitions, no visitors, we have no administrative appointments, and of course item 6 would be public comment. All right, item 7 would be committee and staff reports. That would be workshop only for in-county travel, out-of-county travel. And then item 7.3 is risk management and insurance update report presented by Mr. Russ Frakes, Program Director, Risk Management and Insurance. Mr. Frakes, I saw you earlier, so please come forward.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just want to appreciate the time this morning for our board members and Mr. Superintendent. Just want to come to the board this morning with just a brief update on our risk management program. Talk about highlight some issues that we're dealing with, and just so that the board is informed. Of course, we meet. The board meets. The trust meets. The Florida School Boards Insurance Trust meets quarterly, and on the heels of that, I try to come in and provide the board with some updated information that we learn at that meeting. Of course, Mr. Bryan attends that with me as well as the Okaloosa County's trustee. So just to bring everyone up to speed and just make sure, as a means of review, the Florida School Boards Insurance Trust is an organization that provides insurance services for member school districts. There are 13 member school districts that participate in the trust. They provide risk management services, loss control services. They handle our claims, all our workers' compensation claims, our property and casualty claims as well. So if we have any issues that arise, we've got adjusters that are assigned to our account, and we work very closely with those folks, and they do an excellent job for us. They also provide us with market access. That's how we obtain our insurance policies that provide coverage for everything from our buses and school buildings to the various other exposures that we have in the district. As I said, workers' compensation claims that we have a worker that gets injured. Just want to brief everyone on one of the things that we do. We spend a good deal of time on is looking at what are the market conditions. We're leading up to this process where we're renewing our policies every year in the spring, and what forces are at play as we look at what we might expect looking forward whenever it comes time to renew that policy. Of course, we renew each year in June. At the end of June. The trust obtains coverage for us actually a little bit earlier than that, and that's all ongoing now. We're in the process of putting applications, pulling data together, and looking at just what's going to impact this. Of course, we've been in a hardening market cycle. That is a period of increasing prices. That process is cooling. That market condition is cooling now, though. There is some light at the end of the tunnel, it looks like, maybe even considering the fact that we've got the impact of catastrophes that are going to play a big role, of course, especially here in Florida, as we've seen recently. This past hurricane season was pretty strong with Ian coming through. We'll talk about a little bit more about that in a minute. So there are some market forces at play that are again, they're cooling, and there's some new companies coming in, some new money, additional dollars are available, and of course the law of supply and demand is at play there, just as it is with anything. So we may see some better news, and we have a good story to tell with the trust. A very strong financial condition of the trust. Good, strong risk management programs in place, despite the coastal exposure and despite the loss experience that everyone, of course, that was impacted with Ian will have to deal with. And even if you weren't directly impacted, if you're a homeowner in the state of Florida, you've seen that. And you've seen our legislature go into special sessions to discuss property insurance. It's a big deal. It's an important topic in the state of Florida, especially. So, but all of these reasons really further underscore the reason that we should have a strong risk management program, and underscores the importance of that. So, we talked about the impact of Hurricane Ian that made landfall September 28th. It impacted greatly Charlotte and DeSoto counties, Charlotte more so than DeSoto. DeSoto was a new member to the trust. They came in, had a brand new risk manager, came into the trust and had Hurricane Ian show up a couple of months later. So they were fortunate. Total losses are for the impacted school districts are the trust members. So DeSoto and Charlotte expected to be around $100 million, possibly in excess of $100 million. So a very significant loss. Here we show some photos. This is Charlotte High School. And actually, this is after the storm. Actually doesn't look that bad. I was talking with one of the Fisbit folks as I was pulling these pictures together, and you can see some things and we'll see some things that blew off, some roofing and venting and things like that, some HVAC stuff that was damaged, but doesn't really look that bad, all things considered. Now, keep in mind, they built this school after Hurricane Charlie. They were great, again, a direct impact from Hurricane Charlie, so they've got a lot of new schools. So their codes that they were built to are much more modern with all the wind mitigation efforts. A lot of water intrusion, though, as you can imagine, with 150-mile-an-hour sustained winds they had coming through there. There was a lot of water intrusion that they had in the school. So, well, look, and you see here some of the HVAC stuff and roofing materials that were blown off. So there was a lot of that's really what you're looking at, is not buildings that weren't blown down or anything like that, but it certainly, as you saw some residential structures, there were a lot of pictures of that kind of damage, but here we see just a lot of water intrusion. One of the things I wanted to highlight with this, and the reason that I'm bringing this to the board, is so that we understand and we see what the response was in this case for a trust member. Emergency Advantage and Fisbit both responded here. Now, Emergency Advantage is a company that Fisbit has contracted with to provide. It's called a pre-position contract. So they provide resources from material, equipment, workforce, manpower, and put them. They had a couple of 18-wheelers that were set up down there with all the equipment that was needed just outside the storm impact area, the most severe impact area, and came in right after the storm. So within 12 hours, they had actually cut their way in, clear roads and so forth to be able to get their equipment in. So it took some time to do that, but they were immediately in contact with both of trust members, had 600 plus workers that started working on that within 12 hours. Within 48 hours, had a 24/7 operation going to mitigate the losses, take care of dewatering, and work on seeing what hurdles remain to getting these schools back in service, getting these classrooms back in service. And of course, we know, as you can imagine, we've dealt with it here where we've had to shut schools down for a couple of days. You can imagine if you have a Category 5 hurricane come into your district, what kind of upheaval that can, you can only imagine what kind of issues you've got to deal with. You see here just some of the how vast this operation was with all the equipment that they've brought in. Here we see some of the dryers, massive pieces of equipment, and the people that are there working. And this is right after the storm is cleared. We see here a gymnasium at the high school that they were able to save. And you see that flooring after they've gone in there and dried it out. They were able to save that floor. You can imagine the cost of a floor like that of being around at a gym of that size, probably $500,000 or so. To restore that. And if you don't get to it, we've seen other school districts that have had hurricanes that have had just this situation occur and didn't get to it in time and had to simply go in and tear out and replace, and it was quite expensive. So you see some of the efforts that were taken there and the results that they've gotten. So all said and done, within the first 30 days, they got power back up and running. The bottom line for me, though, is number one, that one of the great features they do is auditing of all of the billing, all the different vendors that are involved, so they kind of quarterback that operation to make sure you're getting the best cost possible. Also, they have a FEMA person, a former FEMA employee that helps coordinate with FEMA, which is an excellent feature as well. Altogether, the bottom line for me, to the board members especially, and Mr. Superintendent, 14 days of school they were out. So with a storm of that magnitude, they were only missed 14 days of school, which was before the recommended date or the requested date from the governor's office. So an excellent result there. And really the reason that I underscore this is that I want the board to know that we talk about being members of Fisbit, we talk about all these things, and it's theoretical, and you purchase insurance, and you know, of course, if everyone has home insurance, auto insurance, and those kinds of things. When a loss happens here, we've seen a loss happen, so we know that the trust, our membership in Fisbit we're there for a reason. And this is where we see it play out in practice and really mitigate greatly, and by tens of millions of dollars. I spoke with the executive director, Dave Stevens, and they're estimating possibly up to $50 million decrease in loss based on the efforts that they were able to bring to bear with the efforts of Emergency Advantage and the FSBIT staff that was there working as well. So a good result. Other things that are going on, crisis management training that we've launched. And this is something that we developed with Special Contingency Risk. I've spoke about it briefly before. We've gotten that launched now. We're going to see some monthly trainings that will take place. Mr. Dean was involved in that process as well, actually the development of that program because of his role in our state program. So we're appreciative of his efforts, and I think the quality of the program owes to his efforts, as well as the expertise that we have from the folks at SCR. And I'm proud to say that we had probably the heaviest participation was by our Okaloosa SROs. They showed up, they participated in the program probably more so than any other of the member districts. So we look forward to being happy to be able to provide that as a resource, and hope that folks take advantage of it. We will continue to push that out to our folks, as well as any other member districts and other folks that want to take advantage of it. We've got some property appraisals that are going on, so we've not had our property actually looked at in many years. So we're going to be capturing some new data, and with the idea of making that information as accurate as it possibly can be to ensure that the school districts are properly covered. The school district property is adequately covered. There's adequate coverage in place. So we'll pass that. Insurance is the values on property are simply trended forward. So that's that process. We got FSBIT staff members that are doing. They were here a couple of weeks ago. They'll be back in January to finish that process up. So we'll look forward to having that information from them. So Vector Solutions trainings, again, that's the training platform that we have access to, a video-based training platform that we've utilized to train staff. Push that information out. We've met with our principals over the summer, and they responded. We've had 5,800 trainings done since the beginning of the school year. 2,000 plus users, 2,200 users that have gone in and completed some level of training. And we see, and it's kind of small there, but de-escalation was one of the primary things that we looked at. I think almost 25% of those were de-escalation related trainings. So our principals are having their staff take advantage of that product, and I think that's good because we've seen it borne out in numbers where more training is done. That has a positive impact on what you see in claims that result in incidents that occur. So,
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Mr.
Yes,
Frakes. Mr. Frakes, if you can go back to the appraisal slide real quick.
Yes, sir.
And the Sheriff's Department facilities appraise the partial. What are we exactly appraising there?
We're looking at all our school buildings, especially our one of the things that kind of gets away from us a little bit is property in the open.
I'm sorry. I was thinking Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department.
No, that's school district property. Scott Wilder from FSBIT's coming and looking at going around the schools and looking at all of our buildings, make sure we're up to date with what information is presented on our schedule of values.
That's my fault.
Okay, no problem.
Yep.
Any other questions on the property program? Okay, very good.
Well, just one.
Yes, sir.
Well, my experience has been is that when the property values go up, that's not the only thing that goes up.
That's correct.
So would we expect our premiums to increase?
If we see an increase to our schedule of values, of course, it's just rated on a per $1,000 of property. So certainly you would. So,
yeah.
But we don't know what the result of that will be. We've been trending those forward each year. So. Just by percentage, so 7.5% for 1 year, and all that is done, and actuaries kind of weigh in on those things and provide us with that information.
Well,
so we'll see how that.
It's important to have that baseline. So
so we'll know.
I'm glad you're
instead
doing
of just trending it based on actuarial information, we'll be using actual data
Right.
from having looked at it. So we'll see how that shakes out. But we certainly want to make sure that we're not underinsured. If
Right,
we got
covered.
property that's not
Right.
covered there, and we wind
That's
up with a situation like Charlotte has, and then it's then we're dealing with another issue post-loss. So, all right, any other questions? Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Frakes.
Russ, I do have one quick question.
Absolutely.
But we're getting ready to go into
Yes, understood.
But when we get
I'll
back,
kind of watch the clock here.
Can you just explain how the
Yeah, you want me to come back up?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
go about how our self-insured process is going, so.
All right, so that's about perfect. So let's recess this meeting, and then we'll reconvene the leasing meeting. And Mr. McInnes, I'm going to turn it over to you to make sure we follow all the corporate rules here.
Yes, sir. The first thing this morning, board members, we'd ask you to do is to approve the agenda that's been published for this meeting.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant.
Second.
Second by Ms. Gardner. Any discussion? All right, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, so the motion passes.
And then, Mr. Chairman, you have next approval of minutes. There's two sets of minutes there. The minutes of your meeting December 9th of 2021 and your meeting of December 13th, 2021 that are here for consideration.
All right, so you need a motion to approve those minutes?
Yes.
I'm asking for a motion.
I'll move it.
Motion by Ms. Vancheck. Need a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0. All right.
And then into Category 4, under the bylaws of this corporation, the directors annually are the seated members of the school board. So we would ask you to consider a motion that would elect the current school board members to be the board of directors of the leasing corporation.
And we've done that before.
Yes,
In
sir,
fact,
that's-
last time.
that's
So
consistent.
need a motion to that effect?
I'll move it.
Motion by Ms. Gardner. Need a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Vancheck. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0.
And then next, you need to elect annually the officers of the corporation, and we would ask that you designate the board chair, Dr. Diane Kelly, as the president, and the board vice chair, Dr. Lamar White, as the vice president, and the superintendent, Mr. Chambers, as the corporate secretary.
As in the past, we've done that.
And that's
So
consistent with the bylaws.
yeah, so we need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
I'll second it.
second by Ms. Vancheck. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0.
And finally, Mr. Chairman, there is a annual fee payable to the Florida Secretary of State to file the 2023 annual corporate report for this entity, and we need your authorization for that to be filed and paid for.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
I'll second it.
second by Ms. Vancheck. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0.
And that would conclude your business.
And so that concludes the special meeting, and we'll reconvene the workshop. And Mr. Frakes, I think there's a question that Mr. Bryant was curious about.
Yes, just by way of an update on our self-insurance program. Now, of course, we're talking about the medical insurance program that we're launching with United Healthcare. Everything will remain the same as far as our employees are concerned. United Healthcare will continue to process our claims. We'll have access to their network. It will be different in the way that we administer it on the back end with regard to the financial piece of it. So that all of that is moving forward. There's a great deal of interaction that's taking place with United Healthcare, with our stop-loss insurance carrier. Our finance department is engaged in that. We've got a lot of that conversation, a lot of the banking considerations are all being taken care of now. So everything is moving forward, and we're in good shape. It's all going to be ready to launch January 1st. So we're excited about it, and I think it's something that's a great opportunity for the school district to see an excellent outcome from that effort.
Mr. Chair, I do have another question to follow up
Sure.
with, going back to the FSBIT report. So Charlotte and DeSoto counties, of course, we hear this at our meetings, but can you just kind of go over the response that we've heard from neighboring districts from around those two counties on the response that
Yeah.
FSBIT had?
Absolutely. A tremendous amount of interest, as you can imagine, from those other districts when they see the disparity between what Charlotte and DeSoto experienced with that instant reaction and what they're dealt with. And as you can imagine, the other alternative would be if you can bring in, you can certainly get into a pre-positioned contract. Absent that, though, you're left to local sources. They may have been impacted themselves, and that's the advantage of having someone come from out of town with equipment and manpower and all those sorts of things. Those resources are there and dog-eared. That's dedicated. You know that you have access to that to those folks. Whereas you know, if you're left to your own devices, you may be out there finding that the local providers may have been impacted themselves. They may be overwhelmed. They've got personnel probably that are impacted by the storm as well, also, just as you are. They may have difficulty accessing equipment. Those kinds of challenges can arise. And I think we saw that there was a disparity between the reaction that those districts saw that had access to that type of response versus those that did not.
Right.
So-
And Lee and Sarasota County are on the
Sandwich those, yes.
sandwiched in between,
Yes.
or above them
That's
and
right.
below them. And you're right. I mean, hearing from my Lee County counterparts on that board, you know, they really struggled, and it was
Absolutely.
because they had to deal, like you said, with
Right.
the other
Right.
entities
What was left,
that
yes,
were crippled
absolutely.
already. You
That's
know,
right.
So,
That's right.
and to only lose 14 days of school between
Absolutely.
among school districts, that was
That was an
huge.
incredible effort. I was
Yeah.
very impressed with that. I was really, in seeing the destruction in that area and just what they had to deal with, I can only imagine. And to have them only take those schools out of service for 14 days was remarkable.
And I'll just end by saying, you know, thank you for all that you and your
Absolutely.
team do. I can assure the board, being the trustee member, that FISBIT, if we were to have that type of
Absolutely.
issue up in Okaloosa County, and Santa Rosa County is also a member, you know, I feel comfortable that the response is going to be just like they did for Charlotte and DeSoto.
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct.
You know, that's why I'm glad that you were able to bring this report
Yes.
to share with my fellow
Yeah,
board
I
members.
thought it important to, you know, just so that as board members, you understand just what it means whenever something does happen. This is the kind of reaction you can expect. All right? Thank you, folks.
That's all.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. All right, folks, so that brings us to Section 8, the consent agenda. I do want to point out that there is one change to the consent agenda, and item 8.30 has been added to open additional national bank account, and that'll be, as you'll see that on your agenda for Monday night. All right, item 8.1 is to approve the agenda. 8.2 would be approve the minutes of the disciplinary hearings of November 10th, minutes of the workshop meeting November 10, and minutes of the regular meeting November 14th, and then the minutes of the organizational meeting of November 22nd, 22 is recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.3 would be the appropriation of District 1 School Board member capital outlay funds to Shoal River Middle School for flooring in the office hallways and in the break room for the amount of $5,998.50, presented by myself. Item 8.4, appropriation of District 2 School Board member capital outlay funds to Mary Esther Elementary School for classroom flooring support in the amount of $20,000, recommended by Board Member Marty Gardner and recommended by the superintendent for approval. Board members, I'll try to pause after each one of these, but if I forget or you need to go back, just let me know. 8.5, appropriation of School District 3 School Board member capital outlay funds to Shoal River Middle School for entryway flooring in the amount of $4,070.80, presented by Board Member Linda Vancheck and recommended by the superintendent for approval. Item 8.6, appropriation of District 4 School Board member capital outlay funds to Southside Primary School for flooring in 2 classrooms, 2 offices, and 1 hallway in the amount of $21,173, presented by Board Member Tim Bryant and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.7, appropriation of District 4 School Board member capital outlay funds to Richburg School for 2 stackable washer and dryer units in the amount of $2,414.28, presented by Board Member Tim Bryant and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.8, appropriation of District 5 School Board member capital outlay funds to Shoal River Middle School for flooring in the guidance offices in the amount of $4,310.20, presented by Board Chairman Diane Kelly and recommended by the superintendent for approval.
Mr. Chair, I would
Yes,
like
sir.
to just comment on, I would like to thank my fellow board members for supporting Shoal River. I see Dr. Driver got to y'all there
Yeah.
in a good way, but thank y'all for your support. But again, it just shows how we all work together to help each other across the district, so thank y'all very much.
Yes, sir. All right, 8.9, request to advertise a public hearing for the adoption of revised School Board Policy 01-06, personal appearance before the board, presented by our attorney, Mr. Jeffrey McInnes, attorney to the board, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.10, request to advertise a public hearing for a revision of School Board Policy 04-28, Emergency Operations, School Safety and Security, presented by Mr. Danny Dean, Program Director, Safe Schools, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.11, request to advertise the public hearing for a revision of School Board Policy 04-33, violent crimes, possession or use of tobacco products, alcoholic beverages, drugs, weapons, or firearms, presented by Mr. Brian Humphrey, Specialist, Discipline and Athletics, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.12, request to advertise a public hearing for revision of School Board Policy 04-49, School Threat Assessment Teams, presented by Mr. Danny Dean, Program Director, Safe Schools, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.13, Budget Amendment Number 2, Fiscal Year 2022-2023, presented by Ms. Julie Perry, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.14, Monthly Financial Statement for October 2022, presented by Ms. Julie Perry, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent. 8.15, Invoices to be approved for payment, presented by Mrs. Perry, Chief Financial Officer, and also recommended by the superintendent. 8.16, School Donations, presented by Mrs. Perry, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent. 8.17, Payroll Warrant Register and Accounts Payable Warrant Register for October 2022, totaling $23,698,403.44, and bank transfers for October 2022 totaling $10,415,000, presented by Mrs. Perry, Chief Financial Officer, all recommended by the superintendent. 8.18, establish Lula J. Edge Elementary Parent Leaders Association, Incorporated, presented by Mrs. Julie Perry, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent for approval.
Mr. Chair, I have a
Yes, sir.
question regarding item 8.18. And what exactly is Elementary Parent Leaders Association, and how is that going to affect that school regarding, how they operate their parent-teacher organization?
I missed the first part of the question.
So can you explain, I've not seen where I take that back. We do have one school that has something like this, but I think that was before I got on the board. But can you explain what this association is? It's incorporated.
It is their PTO.
Okay.
And they have requested to become an outside organization.
Okay.
They are allowed to do that by school board policy if they follow certain procedures. They still have to account for everything. They have to have their own incorporation. They have to have their own audit. They have to have their own banking account. They have to have 2 people sign their checks. They have to request fundraiser approval through all the normal methods, through the principal and through the superintendent. They still have to and they have to provide monthly financials, like I said, in the annual audit that they have to pay for. They are going to be taking responsibility for this money rather than the school.
And you said they have to pay for their annual audit?
Yes, ma'am.
For our schools?
Yes.
Do they have to pay a fee to be part of this parent leader association? Is there a fee attached to it?
You mean
Like
that's
the-
just what they named themselves.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. They're following Plu's example.
Okay.
That was Plu's.
Some of those organizations, there is a fee to.
Mhm.
So I think that was where I was trying to get at. It's not like an outside organization that they're contracting with, that they have
No.
to answer to a higher power, and they just are part of that,
Yes, and the
Okay.
money that they raise will be used for Edge Elementary School.
Now, will there be some, of course, there's always pluses and, obviously you said that they're going to have to follow the same guidelines still. But, I mean, is there going to be any disadvantages that,
I mean, to me, a disadvantage is of just that they are going to have that responsibility.
okay.
And, that's a big disadvantage for them.
Well, I have a question.
That's why we don't recommend it.
I have a question about that, Mr. Bryant, also. And I understand this bears the recommendation of the superintendent.
Sure.
And I also understand that it may be, in fact, that there's some compulsion for approval because it's according to our school board policy as it is currently written, should we not choose to change that. But I guess the simple question I have is, will they be using the simple forms that we have for accounting purposes, like, for example, monies collected forms, or because they're independent, can they choose their own way?
They can choose their own way.
So they may or may not be using our forms and our materials.
Right.
They may choose to use their own in whatever form or fashion they devise. And my assumption would be that that would have to comply with whatever their auditor would want to look at.
Right, because the auditor will be looking for internal controls.
Right.
And like I said, they will have to have 2 signatures on every check, no matter what it is, no matter what the amount.
And I understand that this, in fact, is a support organization, although it is now independent. And it may be that, just a thought, and board members, you certainly, this is just my thought, we might want to look at our board policy regarding this in terms of facility usage, because we know that when we have outside agencies using school facilities, there's a rather rigorous expectation of those outside entities that use our facilities to meet certain requirements, including insurance. And I don't think our policy addresses that. And that's because maybe we know that this is a support organization, but I don't know how we treat them differently as we treat everybody else that's an outside organization.
And I guess the difference would be that they're raising money to support the school versus like a Boy Scout club or a Girl Scout club coming in and using facilities.
You might could make that argument. So it would be something I guess we might want to look at down the road. But any other discussion about this?
I don't understand why they chose to do this. What is the advantage to that group do you have any insight to that? Why they wanted to do this?
I do not, in terms of an advantage.
Okay, so I think it's a disadvantage to our district and our board because of this. They may be an independent entity if we approve this. However, and hating to look at the negative, if something goes south on this, there's a problem, all it reads in the paper is Okaloosa County Schools. It falls on our board. People don't care that they were independent. They're having the name of Edge Elementary on that. So if for some reason some things happen, so let's say the leaders of this parent organization, their kids move on, so they don't want to be anymore. So that leaves the future of this association in limbo. Then it's just sitting there. Okay, then it falls back. It's a slippery slope, I think, for the board to give approval. I know we already have a school, but I just think we have to look at the future and what's going to happen. And then again, like I said, the public sees it as associated with our district and our board, and if anything looks negative, it's going to look negative on us.
I have a question for Mr. McKiss, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
PTOs, do they fall under the sunshine laws? I know SACs do, but do PTOs?
There's no similar requirement there,
Okay,
no.
all right.
Well, and I would ask about the external audit again. Do they select the company, the business that will audit them?
It has to be a CPA. They're required to audit based on state red book, based on our rules, just based in good sound business practices, internal control.
And do you know, just off the top of your head, just an estimate of what that would cost the PTO? I mean, I know they raise funds for students, teachers. This would be an outside cost
Right.
approximately.
I mean, I would think it would be around $2,000 or $3,000 that they would be spending on that.
That's kind of what I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
a couple thousand.
What is the, is there a state rule on this? I know we say it's in our policy, but do we have to approve it, or is it strictly our decision to let them do that?
Well, your policy has set the standards that any group would have to follow and comply with to come forward, and we worked through those and reviewed these bylaws, and they did meet those standards. So it was just a determination that was made by this board in the past to have rules set up if anybody asked to do this, and so they've come forward and gone through the process.
And we have just one other school that's done this?
That's my understanding. There were, a number of years ago, there were a number of them that did that, but there was an effort by the district and the board to bring those organizations, those funds in-house into internal accounts so that the volunteer parents didn't have to keep up with all of this financing and auditing and checkbooks and all those things, because over the years that had posed a number of issues.
Exactly.
And
And so
so-
with having, excuse me, I'm sorry, but having our bookkeepers and all, having it in-house gives that oversight. Letting it out, I'm telling you, could possibly cause us grief.
Well, and that's one of the reasons, Ms. Evancheck, that the policy has some stringent requirements if there were going to be a group that wanted to do an outside organization, such as the audit, and the requirements on the check signers and things of that nature. But that is the policy in place at this time.
And in the policy, does it say, let's say, something, their audit's not clean or something like that, we can rescind this so that they can no longer function outside the school district?
Well, if they should become out of compliance with your board policy and what they're doing, then I would suspect the superintendent would come to the board and recommend that they no longer be authorized to be affiliated with the school.
Will this bring on additional or different policies for our bookkeepers? Will they, because I know our bookkeepers have policies they follow under, with our PTOs, but if the PTO decides to do different procedures, different money collection forms, will that bring on something additional to our bookkeepers? Does that make sense?
No, our bookkeepers won't be.
Okay.
Because the money's not in the school
Right.
account, it's going to
Okay,
be
the
in
money will be
their, they have to come up with their
completely-
own bank account and all that,
Their
right?
own bank account, if
Yeah.
they make a donation to the school more than $500, it goes on the board agenda, just like any other outside organization.
And I want the PTO, we appreciate and want to support these PTOs. I
Sure.
mean, these are parent volunteers that are coming in. And again, I don't want in any way to appear that we are not, but I do remember, and Dr. White probably remembers also, many years ago, how we had all these separate organizations and why it was brought together because of the control and being able to monitor it, because we did see some concerns.
And
But we
if
do
I-
appreciate the PTO
Yes, ma'am.
and
If I-
what
if I
they do
could
for us.
just follow up along those lines, because you mentioned forms. The fundraiser form is one that I remember was very important, because it specified what the fundraiser was going to be, who was going to be involved, how long the fundraiser would go on,
Mhm.
and it specified what those funds would be used for.
Right.
Since they're independent, will they complete our fundraiser form?
Yes, that is one of our requirements we have specified.
Okay, well, that's good news.
Yes.
And so the principal then would know
Mhm.
what was going on and would
Mhm.
sign and would say, okay, we
Yes.
can go forward.
And it would be approved by
And so
the
no other
superintendent's
fundraisers then,
designee.
no other fundraisers would occur except those that have gone through the fundraiser form request.
Correct.
Okay.
And any funds that are currently in the PTO internal funds account will stay in the PTO internal funds account. they
You mean in
can-
the school?
In the
In the school accounting
At the
system?
school accounts, and they would still use those just like they do now. They would be starting fresh.
In any fundraiser activity, the principal has the final oversight signature on all of that.
The
They cannot
principal
go
and
off independently
once
and
the
do
prin-
things.
Yeah, once the principal approves, the superintendent's designee has to also approve it before they can proceed.
I just don't see why they request that. I'd be curious to know why they think this is an advantage for them versus working within the school.
One of the things they cited was that they wanted to become a 501c3. I can't remember if it's C3
Which is
or 3C.
nonprofit.
And because there are a few grants that require that and then won't work with schools, but I did tell them that
Mhm.
Okaloosa Public Schools Foundation is a 501c3 and can apply
They
on
can do
their
it through that,
behalf.
yeah.
Mhm.
I just think, in my opinion, along with what Ms. Evancheck is saying, that there may be significant liability associated with this, and not just for the school district, but maybe even perhaps those that are involved in an independent corporation. And I don't know what kind of, I think Mr. Frakes has already left, but what kind of risk management coverage we might have for eventualities that could conceivably occur when these are our organizations that are doing these activities. But I know in the case of an outside group that uses the school facility, do we still require them to have $1 million of insurance, Mr. McInnes? Is that right?
I can't recite the standard, but the facility use agreement still has insurance requirements, yes.
For $1 million, if I remember, at least when I used to sign those for groups that used our campus and used our facilities. And I just think that may be an area that our policy ought to address if we require that of other groups.
Yeah, oftentimes the group will obtain a special events coverage for
That's
that
right.
activity.
That's right. Well, we required it.
Yep.
They had to present that as part of their facility use, whether it was the Little League or Boy Scouts, even if they were the kids at our own schools. We still required them to have that because they were an outside agency, an outside group. Because we know that there is liability associated with those events.
And one other thing, like right now, if the PTO is within internal funds, teachers and office work can help collect that money.
That's right.
Mhm.
When it's an external organization, our employees cannot help collect the money. So that means they have to send volunteers up to do those collections.
And I just want to say, listening to the concerns, which I absolutely appreciate, so I just want to highlight a few things from the policy, and just a few things. So one, this organization is to provide an annual budget, list of officers, list of check signers to the principal at the beginning of each school year. Secondly, they have to maintain adequate and auditable financial records at all times. Another piece requires signatures of 2 elected officers on all checks and elected officers within their organization. They do have to follow the district fundraiser approval procedures. They do provide monthly financial reports to the school principal and annually provide the principal a copy of the financial statement audit. That's just a few highlights. So there are mechanisms that were put in place by the board, previous boards, many years ago. We do have another school in the school district who has followed this form of a PTO for, I think, over a decade or more. However, with that being said, I think we know that school board policy always has the ability to be revised, and if this board so chooses to direct me to look at this policy and make some revisions, I'll be more than happy to do so.
And Mr. Chair, if I can
Yes,
just
sir.
respond to Mr. Chambers' comments. So first of all, Mr. Chambers, thank you for that insight there. My question was clearly because it's on here as an association that could, just to explain to the public why a school would be doing that. But I do appreciate the fact that, you obviously had some follow-up to this and, so I do appreciate that. I also do appreciate the candid conversations that we've had through the school board here, but it is something that the public doesn't normally see on our agenda items because, like you said, it's been long before any of us were on the board that this has happened before, and I think it was just a great for Ms. Perry to come up here and explain the process and why it's there, and
Well, and would it be, and I'm just throwing this out here, being that if we do approve, being the first year, having an audit like semester and not wait till the very end of the year, and then all of a sudden we start seeing red flags?
Well, they
Would-
don't pay for it.
Honestly,
Well-
the semester, they will just be operating a semester, and then
Okay.
it'll be the end of the fiscal year, the end of June.
Okay.
And what would be the difference of that, Ms. Perry, and the monthly financial reports that go to the principal?
What's the difference? The difference is the monthly financial reports are something that the organization will prepare, and the audited financials, the organization will prepare their financials, but then the auditors will come in and look at all their books, look at their financial statements, make sure that everything is represented correctly and that they have proper internal controls. And if they don't, then they will write that in the audit, and we will find out.
Would we in any way be CC'd on that, so kind of keep just an overview, just to watch or just to see, or is that just all strictly between the PTO and the principal?
Well, I've let the principals know things that they have to watch for and what they're supposed to receive, and I've let them know that I need to receive the audit.
Okay. Well, they just have so much on their plates already, so.
No, I need to see that audit.
Yeah, yes, you do. You
Yes.
definitely, and that's what I was, I want to make
Yes,
sure that
ma'am.
you do see the audit.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, Mr. Chambers, I'm looking at this letter of request that was sent to you by this organization. And one of the things it says is, we have witnessed other elementary schools in our district benefit, and they've used a plural, which actually we only have one, and so forth, that they've been able to benefit. So the thing is that, as we all know, sometimes when we start approving things, it's going to snowball. And that would be my concern. What if we have a multitude of these schools? I mean, we have, 40 schools, and they begin to do this. I just, I have some real concern about, they're using a school's name, but they're separate entity. And if there's anything that doesn't go well, again, it's not just looked at as that parent group, it's looked at, it puts a reflection on our district and this board. And so,
And I fully understand, and again, we have school board policy that allows for this to occur
Right,
with
right.
parameters in place.
Right.
And again, I'll be more than happy to revise this policy.
Yes, sir, and in fact, I think I prefaced my remarks by, this is our policy. And so I understand that the superintendent is, in my opinion, compelled
Yeah.
to move forward with this
Mhm. I
recommendation.
understand that. Mhm.
Given the fact that this organization appears to be meeting the requirements of current and existing board policy. Now, what I would say is, in my concerns about another agency using our facility may be moot. I mean, it may not be relevant to this, although I would like to see a relook at this policy. Just my position. We're in a workshop, it's not a formal vote. But I think if that is something that's legitimate and is a concern regarding risk that this school board, this school district may incur through the activities now of a different entity, I'd just like to have that looked at and have some level of assurance that, well, Lamar, there's nothing to worry about.
Well, and I did a couple of months ago talk to Mr. Frakes about the facility usage policy,
Ah.
for him to kind of look at that. There might
Okay.
be some tweaking that needs to be
Right.
done. And if I correct, were they not grandfathered in back? It wasn't something that the board was at, and that's been a long time ago. But I thought
We need to
that.
search that out.
That's existed for a long time.
It's existed for a long time, and it was kind of like grandfathered. I don't think there was ever a board that, I don't believe so.
What do you
Okay.
mean grandfathered in?
Well, it was because they used to just make these different organizations, and we tightened that control down. And we
Okay.
said, you
Made it
can't
official.
just, all we recommend you come in. Plu did not want to. We said, okay, if we have any more, you have to be approved by the board. Or, you got to make sure that you follow all of these rules. And so then that's when we became more stringent, because we
So-
don't want people just going out and opening.
So here's where we are now, though, is that Monday night, we're supposed to approve or disapprove this. So if we approve it, then we go look at our policy and then change our policy. That's kind of strange. And then yet, right now, like you said, they meet the letter of the policy. So,
One thing we might want to keep in mind, and because I want to make sure that, especially based on this conversation where there are legitimate concerns, and we have an annual review process of board policies, and I get what you're saying in terms of Monday night and then following the current school board policy. But what I might do is look at this policy, bring you all some, maybe some revised language and maybe even a proposed policy if you see fit, and go that direction. No action that necessarily needs to occur at this time, like you said, but I can bring some new language and even potentially a new policy.
Well, can I just offer this? I mean, should this item stay on this agenda, I conceivably, this item could be moved to discussion. There could be a motion made to table it, and then that would give the superintendent time to do what you suggest. Is that correct, Mr. Attorney? Could that eventuality occur?
Yes, sir, the board certainly could take those actions.
All right. And/or the superintendent, could he, at this point, in this juncture, since it's on the agenda, could he choose to just take it off the agenda now?
He could.
Okay. So there are two options there. And then, of course, the third option is to leave it exactly as it is and call for a vote.
yes, but again, like I just said, that kind of puts it in an
I know,
awkward
I
situation.
understand. I
Looking
agree.
at a policy after we've voted a group in
I know.
seems a little cart before the horse kind of thing, but, so may I ask you, Mr. Superintendent, what you're inclined to do then is just look at the policy and you're going to bring it back to us, or are you going to table this, ask us to table this, or what are you thinking?
I would see it being its board policy, and this is just me. Mr. McGinnis can give more insight with this being board policy.
Yeah.
I believe that maybe it needs to be moved to discussion and have a potential vote if you all see fit to table it. Allow me to talk with the PTO president as well as the principal, and then bring back some recommendations for a January board meeting,
So,
and not necessarily the first January board meeting.
right, so,
And I think probably, but in just my opinion, the fact that it's on the agenda, and now the agenda has come to the school board, and Dr. Kelly will inherit this when she returns, that because it's on this agenda currently, that probably moving 8.18 to discussion would be appropriate. And then if a board member chose to make a motion to table it, and there were to be a second, and there were to be a majority, then that could occur. We're not saying no, we're not saying yes, just gives them a chance to look
Need
at the
to look
board
at it.
policy. Do y'all concur with that?
I think my only question would be,
Yeah.
what about Plough? They're already on that, so, I mean, that would be,
It's been that way.
yeah, for 10 years. Again, my question was just, and again, I appreciate my board members' discussion on this, and I hear what they're coming from. I just have not, for the general public to see that this has come to us, I felt it was necessary to at least get an explanation why one PTO was going to, incorporate. Obviously, we do have another one, so I think where we run into an issue is we already have one that's doing it.
Right.
And can we, like I said, look at the policy for future, future references, so.
And our questions, or my questions, do not reflect in any way at all about EDGE, PTO.
Oh, no,
I
it's
mean,
not about
we,
that.
Like I said,
Mm-mm.
greatly appreciate. I think
Absolutely.
our questions have more to do with policy that we already have in place, maybe what we need to look at, maybe because of some past experiences, but we
Right.
do greatly appreciate what they do.
Of
And
course.
want to make it as easy for them as possible, because we want them to continue to help
Sure.
and donate, because it only supports our students and our children, so it has zero to do with the school itself.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I do have a follow-up question to that.
Okay.
So let's say that everything goes fine and EDGE does this and their audit is fine. That's one outcome. And then the second outcome might be, suppose there was a finding on this audit that they have to conduct of their own activities. Could that in any way be reflected on the school district's audit?
No.
Not from our own internal auditors, nor from state auditors?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anything else? Anything else on this
So
item?
the way I understand it, this is going to be moved to discussion?
If a board member makes that, they can do that Monday night.
Okay.
Or they can do it now, I guess. Is that correct, Mr. McInnes? Can you
It's
declare?
just an individual request, yes, there's no action by the board.
So you can declare now or declare Monday? if
So
you
I'd like to
choose
move that we put this to
Well, it won't be-
discussion.
It won't be a motion, we
Oh.
don't take any
Okay.
action in this.
Okay,
All right,
that's what I
is
was
there-
wondering, so.
But if there's a request by any
request.
individual
Oh, so I'm just
member-
requesting, okay, gotcha.
Yep, so that's it then. All right, so Ms. Mary will move this one to discussion, 8.18.
Gotcha.
Okay. That ought to generate some discussion.
Thank you.
All right. So unless there's anything else, we'll go ahead and move now to 8.19. Renewal of ITB 20-08 HVAC equipment and parts presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.19. 8.20, renewal of tag-on bid annual agreement for portable moving services presented by Mr. Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the superintendent. 8.21, sole source purchase order over $50,000 for Benchmark, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent. 8.22, sole source purchase over $50,000 to Scholastic, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent. 8.23, service agreement 23-96, Todd Whitaker, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the superintendent. 8.24, renewal of fuel purchasing agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County and the Almirante Fire District, Baker Fire District, Liza Jackson Preparatory School Incorporated, presented by Mr. Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent. 8.25, State of Florida Department of Education application for the Driving Choice Grant Program, presented by Mr. McInnes, Transportation Program Director, and recommended by the superintendent. 8.26, Employee Assistance Program Services contract between the School Board of Okaloosa County and Pattison Professional Counseling Center for counseling services, presented by Dr. Lee Hale and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.27, contract agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County and Northwest Florida State College for the 2023 through 2024 school year, acknowledging the collegiate high school program for 2023-2024, presented by Mr. Jeff Palmer, Director, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the superintendent. 8.28, affiliation agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County and Shoal Creek Rehabilitation Center for the practical nursing program at Okaloosa Technical College, presented by Mr. John Williams, Director, Okaloosa Technical College, and recommended by the superintendent. 8.29, school to work contracts between the School Board of Okaloosa County and school to work providers, presented by Ms. Amy Bowles, Program Director, Exceptional Student Education, and recommended by the superintendent. And then 8.30, Open Valley National Bank Account, presented by Ms. Julie Perry, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent.
And Mr. Chairman, on that item, the attachment to your agenda, there will be a date correction on the front page of that resolution. It'll be reflecting your actual board meeting date.
All right, very good. Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Chair, if I can go back to 8.29
Yep, sure.
and just say thank you to those businesses who are going to be working with our students. We definitely do appreciate the opportunity that you give these students. So I would just say to those that might see who these businesses are, please, take time and patronize these businesses and show support for these businesses that take time to support our students.
Thank you, sir. All right, Section 9, Superintendent's Human Resources Recommendations. 9.1, Employees on Administrative Leave. 9.2, Deferred Retirement Option Program. 9.3, Department Staffing Restructure, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.4, Out-of-Field Report for the 2022-2023 school year, presented by Ms. Karen Peak, Program Director, Professional Services, and recommended by the Superintendent. 9.5, Employment Separations, presented by Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent. 9.6, Personnel Recommendations, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, all recommended by the Superintendent. 9.7, Employee Transfers, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the Superintendent. 9.9, Employee Suspension, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the Superintendent. 9.9, Employee Suspension, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the Superintendent. 9.10, Employee Suspension, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the Superintendent. 9.11, Employee Suspension, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the Superintendent. 9.12, Reinstatement Reimbursement of Sick Leave due to line of duty illness, injury, or medical examination, presented by Dr. Hale and recommended by the Superintendent. And 9.13, Leave Without Pay, presented by Dr. Hale, Assistant Superintendent, and recommended by the Superintendent. All right, discussion agenda, we have one there now. Section 11, Construction Programs, Owners, Representatives, Business, and Mr. Bryant, you're filling that role for us now, and any report?
So yesterday I did have a phone conference with Grant and Joel and Bill to set up our meeting dates, and our first meeting is actually going to be this Monday at 9:30 here in Niceville, and I'm looking forward to serving on this committee. I can only hope that I can fill the role as Dr. Kelly did in her 2 years as the representative, but I will do my best to relay all the information back to you and the public.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Bryant. All right, Section 12, Information Technology Seat Management Contract. No business there. Section 13, Mr. Attorney, your business, sir.
No report this morning.
Thank you, sir. Superintendent, we've got some out-of-state field trip requests, and this would also be time for your business, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. Do want to give just a few items to go over. So one, this week, myself and Mr. Horton, we had the pleasure to go around and look at the different projects that are occurring throughout the school district. As you might remember, we have 19 different projects in the COP across 15 schools. And we started at Crestview High School, where we looked at the multipurpose building, looked at the classroom addition. So it's kind of neat to see the progress that's being made, and especially when you compare it to over at Fort Walton Beach High School, which is further along the way. And you know, all this is happening in a systematized timeline. So I would just report to the board that progress is being made in multipurpose buildings, in classroom additions. We have cafetoriums that are going to be built. It was, for me, it was a source of pride to see the construction that was occurring that hasn't occurred in so many years in our county, and is going to be such a great source of pride for our students, for our teachers and employees, and of course for our parents as well. So as you go out and about to your schools, you know, take a moment. I would recommend to you to change shoes. I walked through a lot of dirt, had to go home and polish my shoes, so, but it was worth it. Also want to remind you that the parent surveys are going on, and to date we have about 4,069 survey responses from parents across our schools, and that input from parents is valuable. Our principals look at those responses and make adjustments accordingly. I had my second parent meeting this school year, this week as well. Just want to give you just a few highlights. It went really well, but I do also want to say that we'll be going to the Crestview area on the north part of the county next semester, as well as the Fort Walton Beach, Shalimar area as well. But some of the topics that were brought up, you know, they talked about half-cent sales tax priorities, so we were able to discuss how those priorities were established by the school, by SAC committees. We also talked about music, art, and athletics. And one of the things that they were interested in is space. And as you know, space is always an issue at our schools. Shared with them what we were doing with the multipurpose buildings. as one of our principals said, these multi-purpose buildings are going to be more than just space for cheer, dance, wrestling, and different sports, but it's also the opportunity for during the school day for classes to go in these multi-purpose buildings, for testing to occur in these multi-purpose buildings. So space is something that we talked about in the meeting. We also talked about transportation as it pertains to, if you think about Destin Middle School, or you think about Walker, where traffic kind of backs up on roadways. So one of the notes that we took down, and I shared with them all, no promises on any of these conversations, but definitely are things that we'll look into. So Destin Middle School, for example, where they have space on campus, could we over time look at potentially doing something with the car rider line? So it's something that we potentially could look at, such as Florosa, where we made some adjustments at Florosa. Again, no promises, but definitely a promise to look into what we might be able to do. We talked about teacher hirings and vacancies that we have, and it's real. We have them as well. I talked to a superintendent in a different part of the state, much larger school district than we have, but they have about 500 teacher vacancies right now. Think about that, 500. If we were to equate that to us and our size, we'd have to have about 100 vacancies to be equivalent. So it's still real though. So if you're a parent where there's a substitute in that classroom, it's real for you. So we talked about that as well. One of the things that I was proud was that they did share some of these concerns or topics or questions, but what was a definite theme was their pride for their teachers and their schools. And to hear them talk specifically about specific teachers and the difference that they're making in their kids was heartwarming. I'll say to this board, they were very, very appreciative of keeping schools open during the pandemic and the work that happened, especially at the school site, but with the board as well. So I appreciated hearing that. And lastly, with some of these topics that I discussed and others, what they shared at the end of the meeting was they appreciated clearing up misconceptions that maybe is outside in the public or maybe on social media sometimes, and getting the direct answer. So I just appreciated those candid responses. Going to the Purple Star schools, as you know, 35 of our 37 schools received the Purple Star distinction. Mr. Horton came to me, I believe it was yesterday, and gave me the update that now all 37 schools are Purple Star schools. Good. So I think that was Elliott Point and Bruner. So those are the last two, and they did exactly what they needed to do on the front side. So we just had a conversation with the Department of Education. We were able to clear that up. So we're proud of that. I wanted to let the board know that the social studies adoption process will begin in January. And I just want to go over a couple notes that in December right now, schools are forming committees. Mr. Gord leads that up for us here at the district. He did a great job last year with math, if you remember that whole process. But they'll form committees in December. Also, every elementary, middle, and high school social studies textbook is considered. So we'll go through that process. Not that we purchase every book. As you know, allocations that come, they don't allow for us to be able to do the full adoption of all textbooks, but we do also have semester funds that we've utilized as well. But we'll go through that process, but every book will be looked at. There'll be opportunities for parent input along the way, and there'll be some parents by statute that will also be a part of the process, but we'll also have opportunities for parents and the community to provide input as well. We're also looking at some folks in the school district, or Okaloosa County, that might have some expertise, especially as it pertains to social studies, to also be able to give some input. But we will go through this process as we always do. We'll make sure that we follow school board policy. We'll make sure that we follow state statute as we go through it. And Mr. Gore, he definitely got his feet wet last school year going through this process. So I feel like we're in really good hands as it pertains to that. I want to let the board know, as you know, we've gone to the new progress monitoring testing. We did the progress monitoring test 1. We're now in the window 2. So that testing is underway right now. And then finally, just for the board's knowledge, and you probably already know this, and just for the public as well, exams for high school start December 16th and the 19th through the 21st, so exams for those students. And as we know, there'll be early release for high schools on the 19th through the 21st when that's happening. So I just wanted to give the board, those few items of an update.
I have a question.
Yes,
for
sir.
Mr. Chambers, regarding the Purple Star program. So
Sir.
I know when we were there, when the governor made the presentation, I know me and Mr. Horton had a little conversation about the challenge. Now that we've successfully got all schools on board, the challenge is how do we keep living up to that Purple Star recognition. So, I appreciate the fact that that was already acknowledged, and I hope that that we can continue to say all 30, is it 38, 37?
37.
37 schools can say that every year. So, moving forward.
I'll just add real quickly, thanks, Mr. Bryant. The designation is a 3-year designation, and so they've got that designation, but we'll make sure we have regularly scheduled meetings with our military points of contact, who are our own employees, to make sure we stay abreast of the best practices for making sure those military students feel welcome and engaged.
Are we aware of any other school district that all of their schools are so designated?
No, sir, but I will say there were 116 now with our 2 additionals across the state. Santa Rosa County also is very engaged in the process. They had 24 schools
Okay.
recognized as Purple Star. I don't think any other district was maybe 10.
Okay.
But it was clear looking at the list that not every district in Florida participates, and we obviously have such a military presence here,
Right.
but no one was where we were.
Yep, got it.
And I just like to lastly say, with this being the last board workshop, so to speak, in December, I know we have a board meeting coming up, but just to the board, to our families, just Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
That's right. Very good, thank you, sir. All right, anything else, Ms. Gardner?
Well, we have public hearing shortly. Do you want me to go ahead, or do you want to wait, or?
Go ahead,
Okay.
if you want. I thought you might have a question for the
Oh,
superintendent.
no, I don't. I'm sorry.
Okay, all
We'll do
right.
that.
It looked like you were waiting there.
No, I didn't know who was going to be called next.
All right. Well, it does bring us, though, to board members' announcements and information, and we've got, I guess, about 3 minutes. You want to start, and then we have
I
to
will.
recess. We can
Okay.
continue when we come back.
I will, because I love to recognize the Deputy Jeremy Bodkins over at Bruner Middle School. He received the appreciation from the Florida's Department of Education Office of State Schools for the QR code that he developed for the Fortify Florida tip hotline. And this tip hotline is that if the little QR code, any student, any individual that sees something suspicious, these codes are posted in the schools. The individual could take their phone, hit that, or capture that code right there, and it will quickly notify the appropriate law enforcement agency. So I thought that was pretty cool. We always have such a great partnership with our SROs, and they're always striving and being recognized throughout the state for their what they do for Okaloosa County. And also would like to congratulate Step One Automotive Service. A couple of months ago, we did recognize them and from Okaloosa County for what they do. And I don't know if you saw, Brooke sent it over to me, but they were recognized as the Commissioner's Business Recognition Award for Okaloosa County. And tremendous award, but what they do for our schools, something that part of the guidelines, and it just identifies the Step One to a T, is that they, where was it? I'm sorry. Each school district will nominate a worthy business that provides educational support in areas of civics, literacy, career and technical education, school safety, STEM education, college readiness, and family involvement to students and educators within their community. And Step One Automotive, they go above and beyond. They, fall right in line with every bit of this and what they do, and we so appreciate what they do with our schools. And they're continuing right now doing donations for Christmas with all the bicycles. And so congratulations to Step One for being recognized, and also to
Ms.
Jeremy
Gardner,
Dodkins.
if you don't mind, I want
please.
to add one thing to that, which is neat. There'll be more to come on this as well. But the Commissioner's Award, so there's 67 school districts. So everyone, submits. And then there's a top 3 in the state of Florida that receives the Commissioner's Award. So I'm so glad that you said that, but there's more to come. But step 1 is in the top 3 of
good.
all the awards. So
Okay.
what they do is awesome. So I appreciate you saying that.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
I was at the Destin community, the breakfast, and again, step 1 was being recognized in the Destin community for the service they were doing there. So we greatly appreciate what they do for our entire community, but for especially our student. And one last thing is Amber Floyd, Mr. Chambers' secretary, sent to us all the different many upcoming school events for December. And if you want to get in the Christmas spirit, attend one of these activities, one of these programs, whether it's middle school, high school. The music programs are amazing. The elementary, you will laugh all the way through it. Those are the cutest little kids up there doing some of the silliest little things, but it so makes the program. So individuals, these are pretty much all, I believe are all free, but if you want to get in the Christmas spirit, go out and check our schools and listen to some of these programs.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gardner. Ms. Evanche?
I have no comments, thank you.
Okay, all right. Mr. Bryant?
Just a couple. First of all, just say thank you to Mr. Chambers and Dr. Kelly for joining me last week in Tampa. We had a great time at the Florida School Board Association and the State Superintendent's Joint Conference. We learned a lot. We did talk about social studies textbook adoption, and we thought math was a challenge. We anticipate this being a challenge, but we were also reassured by Commissioner Diaz that he hopes that his team and everybody else involved will have everything in place for us, so when we go to make these adoptions, it's not going to be at the last minute waiting for things to be approved. So I'm really excited about that. Also, Laurel Hill School is doing a shoe drive. So if you have used shoes that that your kids or even yourself might not be wearing, they'll take any shoes, preferably, not worn out, but, new or used, but they're doing a shoe drive up until the Christmas break. So if you might be interested in helping out, they could use any shoes that you can get them. And if you need help getting them up there, just let me know. I'll help you figure a way to get them up there. And that is it today, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bryant. All right, so we do now go into public comment, and then we have several public hearings. 17.1, Revised School Board Policy Chapter 6, 17.2, Revised School Board Policy Chapter 7, and then 17.3, adoption of Resolution 22-13 and the proposed real property exchange with the City of Niceville, presented by Dr. Bill Smith. All right, so that's really all we have for the workshop this morning. Is there anything from staff or from the union? Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and conclude this workshop. Thank you.